Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Just before 5 p.m. this evening came a development that could have the power to shift President Trump's fortunes quite dramatically. His former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, offered to cooperate as a potential witness for special counsel Robert Mueller. Manafort's guilty plea on 2 criminal charges will see him exchange evidence for a more lenient sentence, rumoured to be around 10 years from the original 200. So what could this mean for the work of the Mueller team and indeed for America's president? The investigation, which has seen 6 guilty pleas so far, is trying to unearth whether any Trump associates have conspired with Russia to influence the 2016 election. In a moment, we'll hear from Ken Starr, the independent counsel who gained international fame for investigating Bill Clinton over Monica Lewinsky. His investigation ultimately led to the president's impeachment. First, here's John Sweeney.
Paul Manafort has worked for President Mobutu of Zaire, Jonas Savimbi of Angola and Donald Trump. Add to that list the feds. For today, news broke. Oh, take it away, Kid Creole.
If you want to squeal, said the FBI, we can make a deal.
Back in August, Manafort was found guilty on 8 fraud charges. His old boss went out of his way to say it all had nothing to do with him.
I must tell you that Paul Manafort's a good man. He was with Ronald Reagan. He was with a lot of different people over the years, and I feel very sad about that. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happens. This has nothing to do with Russian collusion. This started as Russian collusion. This has absolutely nothing to do. This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace.
Manafort has today pleaded guilty to 2 more charges. They're nothing to do with his time on Team Trump, but relate to his work as a PR man for former pro-Kremlin Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. The bad news for Trump is that Manafort was his campaign manager when Team Trump was reportedly cozying up to the Russians.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Wouldn't it be nice if we actually did get along with Russia? Wouldn't it be nice?
Putin's a killer. A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
Manafort may have the inside track on Trump-Russia and how the dirt on Hillary, thousands of Democratic Party emails, ended up being blasted across the US media. His lawyer did his best to sugar the pill.
It's a tough day for Mr. Manafort, but he's accepted responsibility, and he wanted to make sure that his family was able to remain safe and live a good life. He's accepted responsibility, and this is for conduct that dates back many years, and everybody should remember that.
A former Clinton advisor found it hard to hide his delight.
Paul Manafort was the campaign manager. He was at the center of everything. He has held out, possibly hoping for a pardon. Perhaps he feels now that he was being dangled by Trump and that there never would be a pardon. In any case, he has now cut a plea deal with the prosecutor. This is the best day that has happened for Robert Mueller in his investigation into the Russian interference into the 2016 election that was conducted in order to help elect Donald Trump.
This isn't the first member of Team Trump who's turned stool pigeon. Far from it. Thus far, campaign manager Manafort, his deputy Rick Gates, lawyer Michael Cohen, National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn, and Foreign Policy Advisor George Papadopoulos have all cut deals with the FBI. The line from the White House is simple. This had absolutely nothing to do with the president or his victorious 2016 presidential campaign. It is totally unrelated. So they say the guilty pleas and convictions of so many senior members of Team Trump have nothing to do with him. To which others may say, ha, cha, cha, cha.
That was John Sweeney. Now, very few people know what it's like to investigate a sitting president, but one who does is Ken Starr. His original investigation into the Clintons' Whitewater property deal was expanded to the Monica Lewinsky case. Judge Starr's investigation led to the impeachment of President Clinton on the grounds of perjury and obstruction of justice. First impeachment of a sitting president for 130 years. Well, he's written a memoir of the Clinton investigation called Contempt, and he joins me from New York now. Judge Starr, nice to have you on Newsnight. Thank you for joining us. Do you agree with that assessment?
My great pleasure.
That was the best day for Robert Mueller. If you were Robert Mueller tonight, I imagine you'd be pretty excited to have Paul Manafort on board.
Oh, there's no question. It's a major step forward for the Bob Mueller team. It reflects the strength of the case that they had. First, of course, they got the jury trial convictions last month. Now this guilty plea, and here's the key to that. We don't know what Paul Manafort knows, so I don't think anyone should be jumping to conclusions. I realize people are tempted to do that. I, for one, am not. I have a totally different perspective. But what my perspective tells me, based on my experience, is you want to have cooperating witnesses. As I recount in the book, we did not receive cooperation from a number of witnesses. If you get cooperation, you get to the bottom of things much more quickly than you otherwise would. That's just to state the obvious. I happen to think that the best days that have come thus far for Bob Mueller are, first, the jury conviction of Paul Manafort, today as well, but also the indictments that have been returned against the Russian operatives, the 11 individuals, the 2 organizations, and so forth. And those indictments shed light on just how dastardly the Russian engagement in American politics was.
Let me just ask you then for your reading. Presumably, you'd only get a deal like this, a hugely reduced sentence, if you're going to roll on the guy above you, which in this case would seem to point to President Trump himself.
No, I respectfully disagree with that. The job of the Justice Department, and Bob Mueller is an officer of the Justice Department, he has independence, but he's nonetheless a special counsel in the Justice Department, is to get to the bottom of things. We used to have a saying in our office, as I recount in the book, we can deal with the truth, whatever the truth is. What we can't deal with are lies. So what Bob Mueller wants
So on that level,
Paul Manafort is the truth.
So if you were President Trump tonight, would you be scared? I mean, as you well know, he's been calling it a witch hunt. Would you just throw it off to one side, or would you be taking it quite seriously?
I certainly would be taking it quite seriously, but of course this all depends upon what Paul Manafort in fact knows. All we know at this stage is that he participated in the June 2016 meeting, but the information we have is it was very, very brief engagement on his part. So we just don't know what Paul Manafort knows. But it would be helpful to have the campaign managers active and full cooperation. So that's very important to getting to the bottom of things as promptly as possible.
Well, let me ask you this. Should a sitting president be forced to testify in court? You will recognise that question because it was the one asked of your former colleague, in fact, the now Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. Should the president be called upon to testify?
It's a judgment called by the prosecutor. I made the judgment, as I recount in the book, that we should invite the president, President Clinton, to testify. We did that on 5 separate occasions, formal invitations. We kept being spurned while there was still the statement for the public, oh, we're cooperating fully, which was simply not true. And so we did issue a subpoena. So yes, I believe that a sitting president can be subpoenaed to testify. However, that has not been tested.
But you pursued a very long, a very tortuous investigation. It consumed a lot of your life. It made you many enemies. I wonder what your advice would be to Robert Mueller.
Stay the course, do your job. You've been given a mandate. You're an officer of the Justice Department. Adhere scrupulously to principles of integrity, but be thorough. And you should feel very good about the event today, because I'm sure Bob Mueller was not looking forward to going through yet another trial. this facilitates his fact-finding process, his ability to assess and evaluate the evidence in a very significant way.
Well, you use that phrase, stay the course. You're best known, of course, for the Clinton investigation. I'm just going to pause for a second, remind our viewers of that time some 20 years ago.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Your investigation, of course, was one into perjury and obstruction of justice. But as you well know, there can be a lot of collateral damage in an investigation of that calibre. And I'm wondering whether you regret how your team treated Monica Lewinsky.
No, we treated her with dignity and respect. We gave her the opportunity to have an immunity deal, which every person who has committed crimes, she did, should want. And it's what her criminal defense lawyers, when she actually had very able criminal defense lawyers retained, but that took her 5 months.
She was in her 20s, she was set up, she was trapped, and she was tape recorded. When she gave an interview in 2014, she said, "One of the worst days of my life, to have my narrative ripped from me, turned into the Star Report, things that they delved out of my computer, it was violation after violation."
Well, I know how Monica feels. Of course, if you're the person who has had this happen to you, you're going to be very angry and very bitter. Here's a different perspective. She had violated the laws. We were authorized by the Attorney General of the United States, Janet Reno, appointed by President Clinton, to look into whether the President of the United States had committed perjury, whether he was obstructing justice, and then the rest unfolded. You know, all this could have been spared if the President had simply settled the underlying sexual harassment lawsuit.
You say she was angry. In your book, you describe her as screaming, pouting and complaining. It was a failure of ethical responsibility to a young woman who you should have protected.
Well, we have different perspectives, and the treatment of Monica Lewinsky was adjudicated in the federal court system, and so we were found to have performed
Do you know what? She was held for 8 hours. I know you'll say that she wasn't held against her will, but you questioned her and held her for 8 hours while she was trying to get hold of her mother. She turned around and said, "That man who turned my 24-year-old life into a living hell, who hounded and terrorised not only me but also the family." I'm just asking you, Judge Starr, whether you think you would have done things differently.
No, I wish she had cooperated. She called her mother, so let me just make this point about her mother. As I say in the book, her mother urged her to cooperate, and in very foul language, which we heard, Monica said, "I'm not going to do anything to bring this president down." She made her decision.
She was 22 years old at the time. She was an intern. There was a total disparity of power between her and President Clinton. And when you bumped into her in a restaurant last year on Christmas Eve, she said to you that night, "Although I wish I had made different choices, I wish you had too." She was paving the way for you, Judge Starr, to apologise. You didn't. Do you now?
No, I absolutely do not, and I respectfully disagree. I understand the perspective that's guiding your questions, but I had a job to do. It was authorized by the Attorney General of the United States. You can take umbrage at the job, but we conducted ourselves in a lawful manner, and eventually Monica cooperated fully. I wish she had done it right away.
And her life was ruined as a consequence. You were accused, as you know, of being politically motivated in your attempt to bring President Clinton down. I wonder if you accept that your zeal sowed the seeds for the bitter partisan divide that we see today. There is an inability now to differentiate between fair investigation and what is essentially partisan witch hunt.
I respectfully disagree. You can make these various charges. I respond to a number of them in the book, and I will simply say we were after the truth, the whole truth, in the setting of a sexual harassment lawsuit brought against President Clinton, and he did everything that he could to stand in the way of getting to the truth. That is the historical record. It's a very sad chapter in American history, and it's a very sad chapter for Monica Lewinsky. But people make decisions, and there are consequences for those decisions.
Ken Starr, thank you very much indeed.